If you hopped on the lockdown baking trend last year, you might already be familiar with a pre-ferment called Poolish as a leavening agent for bread. If not, here's how it's done. Add 100 grams of flour to a small bowl. We used whole wheat, but any kind of wheat flour will work. Next, you're going to add a very small amount of instant yeast. The amount of yeast you add here depends on how long you plan to ferment the starter. This is the amount for a 16-hour pre-ferment, but for a shorter time, you'll need to add more yeast. Add an equal amount of water by weight, then mix until a sticky wet dough forms. Cover this and allow to ferment at room temperature for 16 hours. After the pre-ferment is done, you will notice lots of little bubbles on top, and it should have expanded in the bowl. That's the Poolish done. You can now transfer to a bowl with 70 grams of room temperature water and stir to combine. If you're making this in the winter, the water should be slightly warmer than room temperature, but if it's warm outside, the water can be cooler. Next, add 225 grams of all-purpose, whole wheat, or bread flour, your choice, and mix using your hands until a rough dough comes together. This is called an autolyse, and after it rests for 30 minutes, the dough will develop gluten without requiring excessive kneading like with other bread recipes. After the dough has rested, combine 2.3 grams of instant dry yeast with 30 grams of room temperature water and 7.5 grams of sea salt. Pour this mixture over the dough, then use your hands again to combine and knead the dough for about 5 minutes in the bowl. Cover and let rest at room temperature for about 40 minutes. Once rested, the dough will be very elastic, and you'll be able to stretch each of the 4 corners up, then fold over top one at a time. Cover and let rest again for 25 minutes, then repeat the stretch and fold technique one more time before resting for another 25 minutes. Now it's time to shape the dough. Remove from the bowl and gently press into a rough oval. From there, you can start folding from the top, making sure to tuck the edges in, then press down and push back on the dough to seal it. Continue like this until you have a cylinder of dough. Place a clean kitchen towel over a bread pan and generously dust with flour. Place the dough into the pan with the sealed side facing up. Gently pinch the seal to secure it, then dust with more flour and fold the excess towel over top to cover the dough completely. Let this rest at room temperature for 30 minutes. It's now about time to bake, so make sure your oven is preheated to 235 Celsius or 455 Fahrenheit, and if you have a pizza stone, allow it to preheat as well. Then unwrap the dough and give it a little poke. If the dough springs back slowly like this, it's ready. Place a piece of parchment paper over top, then flip the dough over onto it. Remove the pan and the towel, which should come off easily thanks to the flour. Speaking of that flour, it's now served its purpose, so you can brush off the excess with a pastry brush or just use your hands. Transfer to a pizza peel if using a pizza stone, or just a regular baking tray if not. Then firmly score a line down one side of the dough. This will form a lovely crust and allow steam to escape while baking. Finally, spray the dough with a good misting of water, then transfer to the oven and bake for around 45 minutes. Start checking after 30, and if it's getting too brown, you can turn the heat down a bit. Allow to cool slightly before slicing and enjoying. Click on one of these other great videos and subscribe for more amazing recipes.